In the midst of serious complaints from different sectors, the electoral body of El Salvador assured that Nayib Bukele, candidate for re-election, obtained 2.6 million votes. The United Nations joins all humanitarian agencies from Gaza in their call to the world to avert a tragedy in Rafah. And in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Doctors Without Borders and other humanitarian organizations denounce attacks on hospitals as escalating violence is keeping thousands of people trapped in crossfire. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos and from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. In the midst of serious complaints from different sectors, the electoral body of El Salvador assured that Nayib Bukele, candidate for re-election, obtained 2.6 million votes. Despite the fact that on Sunday the candidate of New Ideas proclaimed himself the winner, it was this Thursday night when the Supreme Electoral Tribunal delivered the cut corresponding to 98.7% of the tallied votes. The result is not free of suspicion. The Supreme Electoral Tribunal has not released the data on participation or the results for the parliament, although the candidate Bukele assured on Sunday that they had 58 of 60 seats in the Legislative Assembly. On the other hand, a leaked audio of the same magistrate who presented the results affirmed that the elections were, quote-unquote, a mistake. The Venezuelan National Assembly rejected and condemned a resolution approved by the European Parliament that it would not recognize the elections or the results of the upcoming presidential elections in the country. The resolution comes after the plenary session of the European Parliament demanded the Bolivarian government to allow the participation of political leaders who had been disqualified for serious crimes against the country, such as the cause of foreign military intervention and economic blockade. The Venezuelan parliament denounced that the European decision also intends to cover up the terrorist actions planned against President Nicolás Maduro and to undermine the normal functioning of the democratic institutionality in the nation. The Venezuelan National Assembly also accused the European resolution of violating the principles of international law regarding the respect for independence, sovereignty, and self-determination of the Venezuelan people. In Colombia, social organizations marched to ratify their solidarity and support for President Gustavo Petro and against the institutional breakdown promoted by sectors of the extreme right wing. Thursday's event was called by political, worker, indigenous, and farmer movements. During the mobilization, the citizens reiterated their support to the administration of the Colombian head of state, Gustavo Petro, while demanding guarantees for the union and social movement. They also called for compliance with the constitutional mandate to appoint the new Attorney General and respect for democracy and the people's decision to elect a democratic and progressive government. Amid these mobilizations, the Supreme Court of Justice failed to select a new Attorney General after 2 rounds of voting. None of the 3 candidates proposed by President Gustavo Petro obtained the required majority. This determination means that the Deputy Attorney General Marta Mancera will take over as acting Attorney General as of Tuesday, February 13th. She will remain in office until the full court elects a new Attorney General. Any of the candidates received at least 16 votes in order to be chosen, so the election was postponed to next February 22nd. And in this context, President Petro denounced that infiltrators in the mobilizations harassed the headquarters of the Supreme Court when the vote for the new prosecutor was underway. The court did not decide, so the controversial Deputy Attorney General Marta Mancera is the prosecutor in charge as of Thursday. The head of the corporation denounced the siege, which had already been condemned by the head of state. On Thursday, the former head of security of the state-owned company Ecopetrol, José González, confessed in the Special Jurisdiction for Peace about an infiltration of the workers' union in Colombia between the years 1982 and 1995. In the framework of the case that investigates the relations between the security forces, paramilitary, and third parties, the former head of security of Ecopetrol in Barrancabermeja, exposed the role of infiltration against the worker unions of the state-owned company, a union that was devastated by the homicides and the siege. In this sense, Gonzalez declared about his time in the army and the knowledge he had of his list with informations of civilians who were delivered to them and then assassinated under the labor union's label of enemies of the homeland. Ecopetrol is the largest and primary petroleum company in Colombia. Also on Thursday, President of Argentina, Javier Milei, ordered the reduction of funds and subsidies to the provinces. In this sense, local media exposed that the order was carried out by the Minister of Economy, Luis Caputo. In the meantime, the presidential spokesman, Manuela Norni, assured that the executive's decision was intended to bring transparency to a system that he stated it works in favor of politics itself. In this sense, social movements indicated that beyond the sociological and political rhetoric, this decision has an enormous impact on the life of an average Argentine. In places like the province of Córdoba, where the libertarian movement was very well received, the cost of a bus ticket could reach $1.20 US. It is worth noting that the Transportation Subsidy Compensation Fund was born as a way to compensate for the cost of tickets paid in the metropolitan area. The United Nations experts urged the United States to review its domestic framework that triggers specific sanctions against different states that have been designated as alleged sponsors of terrorism. UN specialists declare that the unilateral designation itself goes against the fundamental principles of international law, including the principle of sovereign equality. Furthermore, the process through which the designation is made is unclear and non-transparent. It was also said that relevant U.S. legislative acts exacerbate fear and uncertainty. At the same time, they urged the United States to fully comply with its international obligations, including outside of their borders. The experts called on the U.S. government to deeply review the current SST designation framework to prevent negative humanitarian impacts. And with TeleSUR, you can now celebrate one of the largest festivals in the South American continent. Gladys Quesada brings you all the details in this Carnival Time 2024. Tune in every day this week at 7 p.m. Caracas through our Facebook Live at TeleSUR English Official and our X account at TeleSUR English, and discover our most colorful celebrations. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The United Nations joins the urgent appeal by all humanitarian agencies from Gaza and calls on the world to press to avert a tragedy in Rafah. There are more than 1.5 million refugees in that city located in the south of the Gaza Strip. The Israeli Prime Minister's orders makes them all targets of war. More than half of the residents of Gaza were pushed to the south because Israel agreed that this would be a safe zone. However, for more than a week now, the bombardments have been constant against residencies, hospitals, and refugee camps. On Wednesday, the Zionist premier ordered his troops to prepare for an incursion that, according to the UN, will have a terrifying cost. Palestinian authorities report dozens of dead and wounded in recent hours after an Israeli bombardment on the Gazan cities of Rafah and Khan Yunis. The Palestinian government denounces that in addition to the shelling and raids by the occupation forces, Israel has placed snipers in the vicinity of one of the main hospitals in Khan Yunis. The authorities indicated that the Israeli artillery also fired dozens of rockets at the eastern areas of the city, which has been the epicenter of a ground offensive by the occupation army. On the other hand, the international community has expressed its concern over Israel's orders to continue the raids on Rafah, where about 1.5 million people are currently taking shelter. And in the midst of the Israeli siege, Palestinian authorities denounced that at least 10,000 cancer patients are suffering the consequences of the raids of the occupying forces and the aggression against the health system, including lack of medical care and medicines. The Turkish-Palestinian Friendship Hospital in Gaza was providing care to these patients, but ceased to work after the Israeli attacks. On the other hand, the World Health Organization said that Israel has restricted requests for medical treatment abroad since the year 2021. In Saudi Arabia, the head of diplomacy and of several Arab countries held a meeting with the Secretary of the Executive Committee of the Organization for the Liberation of Palestine, in which they demanded a ceasefire in Gaza. The meeting with the Secretary of the Executive Committee, Hussein al-Sheikh, was attended by Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, and Qatar, to call for an immediate ceasefire in view of the intention of the Israeli army to extend its fighting to the Rafah area, where half of the enclave's Palestinian residents are displaced from areas that have been constantly bombed. In this context, the country stressed the need to end the war in Gaza and ensure the protection of civilians. They have also expressed support for the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, which has seen as a spate of funding suspensions in recent days following Israeli accusations that some staff were allegedly linked to the October 7 attacks. We move on to other topics. On Thursday, authorities in Ecuador highlighted that at least 11,000 people have been affected in the canton of Salitre in Guayas as a consequence of heavy rains associated with the climatic phenomenon of El Niño. In this sense, the National Committee for the Regional Study of this phenomenon presented a first balance on the effects. In this way, the report registered 390 dangerous events in 19 Ecuadorian provinces, in which more than 10,000 people have been affected in 100 cantons so far in 2024. In this, it is worth mentioning that the balance included floods, structural collapses, and landslides. The President of Chile, Gabriel Boric, announced on Thursday the activation of the National Reconstruction Funds for the victims of forest fires in the Valparaiso region. Boric explained that this fund was created after the earthquake that hit Chile in February of the year 2010 during the first term of the former President Sebastián Piñera to allocate aid from the private world to attend to specific needs of the affected families, communities, and municipalities. The recent fires have mainly damaged the communes of Viña del Mar, Quilpué, and Germán Villa in Valparaíso. According to the Legal Medical Service, at least 131 people have died and 50 bodies have been identified. The emergency in the Valparaíso region has also left some 15,000 homes affected. In southwestern Ireland, a volcano erupted on Thursday for the third time since December, spewing lava into the sky and triggering the evacuation of the Blue Lagoon Spa, one of the island nation's biggest tourist attractions. According to the Meteorological Office of Iceland, the eruption began at 6 a.m. local time along a 3-kilometer fissure northeast of Mount Sungungur. The site is about 4 kilometers northeast of Grindavik, a coastal town of 3,800 people evacuated before an early eruption on December 18th. The Meteorological Office also added that lava was flowing westward and that there was no immediate threat to Grindavik nor to a major power plant in the area. This is the third eruption since December of the volcanic systems in the Reykjanes Peninsula, which is home to the Keflavik Iceland's main airport and several large cities. And now we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin said that the agreements reached between his country and Ukraine in Istanbul were betrayed by Kiev under pressure from its Western patrons. This was stated by the head of the state during an interview with U.S. journalist Tucker Carlson, recorded on Tuesday and broadcast on Thursday in the midst of strong controversy against the former television presenter. For more than 2 hours, the president spoke about issues that have not been frequently addressed by the mainstream media. Referring to the blowing up of the gas pipelines, he assured that the United States is responsible. Putin was also emphatic in assuring that there is interest on the part of the Russian government to end the conflict. However, as long as the United States continues to send weapons to Ukraine, there will be nothing to talk about. A policy he also described that would be a strategic mistake. Doctors Without Borders and other humanitarian organizations are denouncing attacks on hospitals in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where escalating violence is keeping thousands of people trapped in the crossfire. Hospitals in North Kivu region in the east of the country have come under attack, and the safety of their patients and medical staff is at risk. Fighting attributed to the resurgence of the M23 movement has intensified in the town of Mueso, where several civilians have died inside their homes hit by bullets. In view of the serious situation, the organizations are temporarily relocating their teams. The coordinator of Doctors Without Borders stated that the situation is highly worrying. And Sudan's warring sides have agreed to meet for talks to enable needed aid delivery in their conflict-torn country, the United Nations said on Wednesday. The UN also appealed for a $4.1 billion help to civilians impacted by the 10-month civil war in Sudan, warning that the conflict had fueled an epic suffering. The conflict that erupted in April last year between Sudan's army chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and his former deputy Mohamed Hamdan Daglo, commander of the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, has killed thousands, including between 10,000 and 15,000 in a single city in the western Darfur region. It has sparked a humanitarian collapse, leaving over half of the country's population, that is around 25 million people, in need of assistance and protection. In several Brazilian cities, the various activities for the celebrations of one of the most important carnivals in the world have already begun. From the city of Rio de Janeiro, the carnivals of Brazil are postponed as the most popular festival in the region, with dances, parades, and samba to the point of being declared a UNESCO as intangible heritage of humanity. Rio de Janeiro offers one of the biggest and most awaited events by the population that will take place from February 9th to 13th. It is estimated that 1 million people from different parts of the world will arrive to the place to witness the display of the comparsas in the Sambódromo. In Bolivia, in the city of Oruro, the carnival began this Thursday with the realization of the Andean Anata, while the details for the official entrance of the festivity are being finalized. More than 50,000 people are expected to witness the traditional dance of the tobas that will go through the main streets of the folkloric city until arriving at the sanctuary of the Socavón. The celebration is scheduled to begin this Saturday at 7 a.m. local time. And in Venezuela, in the capital Caracas, cultural activities also began for the carnival. In the popular parish of El Valle, hundreds of children and young people took part in the carnival shout with a caravan that traveled along the intercommunal avenue. The event was attended by the Executive Vice President Delcy Rodriguez and authorities of the governmental entity, among other members of the cultural movement of the area. On Saturday, February 10th, Carnival kicks off at the Sambódromo in Sao Paulo, and the communities are preparing for the biggest event in Brazilian popular culture. Our team tells us in detail what it's like in the most populated city in Brazil in the run-up to the event.
The NMB Sambódromo is ready to receive the samba schools of Sao Paulo. In the countdown to the biggest party in Brazilian popular culture, the Samba School Unidos da Vila Maria is moving at a fast pace to finish the last details.
The school has 70 years of tradition in the neighborhood. We started small and grew with the rhythm of the community, and the Samba School helps in all areas, both in commerce and inclusion, because it also generates income.
Throughout the year, the neighborhood has been preparing for a challenge where the collective is sacred.
Sometimes you need a lot from the community, and the community needs a lot from us too. So everything has to be integrated. The carnival must be together with the people who produce. Everything, anything must be discussed among all us, otherwise it doesn't work out well.
The resources from Carnival Conquest and television broadcasting are sources of profit for the Samba schools, as well as events during the year and donations. Dropping out of the special group of the competition can mean abrupt losses in resources with incidence on the budget of social activities, such as those developed today by Unidos de Vila Maria.
Beyond the carnival, there is a part that is the regard of the community. We also have dentistry, physiotherapy, ballet, judo, capoeira, theater, music. So the work that the Samba School does is much greater than that of the Samba Drum. But the Samba Drum is very important, because there we get support to do all this.
In the school shed, Brazilians are working against the clock to finish making the floats. In 2024, the school will pay homage to Ogun, its Orisha and patron saint, by traveling the passage from Africa to the syncretism in Brazil with San Jorge.
To tell that moment of the Vila Maria with that energy, with strength, with battle of wanting to go up to the special group from where she fell, made this the theme that had to be for this year for her to talk about her own patron and warrior.
Despite its custom of being among the biggest Samba school in 2023, Vila Maria was relegated to the Access Group. The energy of Ogum and the strength of the community of workers that day by day gives battle promised the return of the school to the special group of the Carnival of Sao Paulo.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.